and so on. The world changed then for the red meat industry because the US 757 was an adulterant and zero tolerance. And that thing's very difficult. So want to supply states ever since the early 90s, US for 0157 and say HACCP on the slaughter floor. The things we're going to do today, there are 5 topics. Briefly, in the industry, what is HACCP? And that's only one slide, because then we come to the game changers. How things have changed, and changed for the worse, and make lives very difficult. Risks is about hazards and risks, and we tend not to worry about risks. We ought to. Finally, finish. There must be a better way. I'm going to try and get you into revolution. Brief history first. HACCP started in the 1930s. We always go off it a bit, but no, it was the 1930s. And you can see people do it milk. And they wanted good raw materials coming in, they wanted pasteurization, and they wanted to stop any bugs getting in after the kill step. And even the typhoid in milk. Typhoid was a big killer back then. I'm hoping you can see at the bottom of your screen that there was a big outbreak, a typical outbreak of typhoid in Moorabbin. And you can see how many were ill, how many died. That was actually to a lady who worked in the bottle plant, because milk came in bottles in those days, and she's a typhoid carrier. So every time she went to the toilet, every time she did big jobs, she had a chance of getting typhoid on her hands. And actually, she did get typhoid on her hands, and she on the milk. So that, whoa, what am I doing? Get that. So the big problems for pasteurizing. I'll talk about it a little bit because for 2 reasons. First, you try and pasteurize. A lot of you have put in pasteurizers. Secondly, it's a really good CCP for lots of reasons. In the milk industry, 72, at least 72 for at least 15 seconds. Certain they get that by squeezing the milk into a very thin layer and pushing it between plates exchanger and down a holder tube. Or it gives a 12 kill. So we've got a billion salmonellas. Pasteurizing will knock them off. Pasteurizer in the middle. Oh, I can do this. So you can see the plate heat exchangers. The milk is heated to at least 72. It goes down this holder tube for seconds, and that gives the kill. As well, you then go to packing. If it goes wrong, this diversion valve kicks in and goes round and round forever until they fix the problem. So wonderful CP, and it's well preventive corrective action. And you want that pasteurizer working, won't go through it until you've got it working again. We think of HACCP from the US and space program. They wanted to be certain, of course, that spacemen and women get the shits. And the only way they could do that was to test vast quantities of space food. That was incredibly expensive and difficult to make. Freeze-dried space food for the most part. Now asked every company to produce foods that we eat in zero gravity that's 100% safe. They thought about it and came up with HACCP as we know it today. Down here, in the Southern Hemisphere, when the FDA sent this guy, Florian Majorak, great guy, he sent to a conference in New Zealand, and I happened to be there, and I was lucky enough to get all his overhead projector slides. And that was his technology then, if you were in training or if you're a lecturer. And got all these overhead projector slides, and they were wonderful. And so I did in our course, our food tech course at RMIT, where I was teaching. I put that in 1980. Well, we didn't get going with it earlier until after Garibaldi. And so you are old enough to remember it, and some of you aren't. But basically, kids injured seriously and have been seriously injured with brain damage and kidney failure ever since 1995. And so this is a front page in the national newspapers. And this man, Andrew Theophanous, was the federal health minister, and he got all the departments in the states and territories to agree on a new way of safety, and it involved HACCP. There's Mr. Theophanous, who, unfortunately, a few years later, served time at Her Majesty's pleasure in jail to do with mission.
No.
Who sent?
I just unmuted myself because I wanted to ask a question. Do you mind I jump in and ask a question?
Please do.
I want to know, why was it that it suddenly got applied to the whole of the meat industry and not just the small goods area? Why was it described as a crisis of meat contamination in total and not of small goods production?
Well, question, because HACCP was only ever intended for ready-to-eat foods. It was never intended for raw foods because you cook them, and that's the kill step. A lot have happened which are not scientific and are not logical, but in time, February the 25th, 1995, at that time, there was great panic. The industry was severely affected, and I think sales were down by at least 20%. After going on to 4-day weeks, people that worked in abattoirs were in danger. Copped it. The red meat industry copped the lot. Okay. The history, CCP. You live and die by CCPs every day. Operate them. You record things about them. In 1997, the Codex Committee did something wonderful because they worked on the 7 principles and more. They tightened up the definition of a CCP. One is 3 things. You prevent the target hazard. In that case, they are insects. The toxic E. coli. May add salmonella to it in America, but at the moment, our CCPs are STECs. Do we have anything to prevent them? No. If there were vaccines and everyone was vaccinated, every type of STEC, it might work, but it would cost the earth and it probably wouldn't work. So we can't prevent it. Can we eliminate it? Well, we can, but can't. Or reduce it. Can we reduce STEC to acceptable level? Well, we can't, because there's no tolerance. And it doesn't give us any hope to reduce it to an acceptable level. There isn't one. And we've had it now for 20 years. And we're using it. The meat industry's used it. The industry's used it. It's good. We difference. And the two big systems that cause most of our foodborne illness, Campylobacter and Salmonella. And how it looks. These are the rates of Campy up top in red and Salmonella at the bottom. Those are not going down. So we've got it. It's to work. But so that's the first bit, a bit about history. Would I like to ask anything before I flash on to the next bit? Come mute and come in quickly if you want to. Go on. In the red meat industry, this is it. You're on slide. When the Americans did the reg, or as properly known, Reduction Hazard and Other Systems Final Rule, a great big book which said what they have to do, their have to do, and what we have to do. So that's the meat industry. That's a baseline for HACCP. Coming game changers. And game changers that I think have happened over the last 20 years. And I think impacted on your lives as managers and supervisors in bone rooms. So I'll go through them, one in a bit of detail, but zero tolerance. You've got CCP on the slaughter floor, INDISAM monitoring, so remember MSQA. The systems where you have a system, management system. One system, you'd audit it. The department had their own, and the customers have their own. The methods for 0157 became more stringent, so we did it more often. And they put 6 in there as well, so now for 7 of them. This one, supermarkets go feral, and I'd be drawing in your breath in Western Australia at the World Meat Company. But I'll give you an example of what I mean by this later on, and we'll cover it. Actually, interventions are us. So this will be the bulk of what I'm going to put to you, what I think are 9 big game changers. None of them have been the better. Before we go on, would I like to say anything? Have I missed a big game changer from your point of view? If you unmute and speak ever, or hold peace. Let's have a go at these. Game changer number 1. First of all, the Americans say it's an adulterant and they apply zero tolerance. So the first question is, adulterants? No, they're not. They're completely normal part of the microflora. They should be there. They are there. Every E. coli has an O number, and if they have an H number. There are 7 of them with the wrong numbers. They're pathogenic. Perfect right to be there. So adulteration concept has always been wrong. But zero tolerance, is that a credible scientific concept? Well, it isn't. It's a regulator's dream. Clayton's reg. Some are probably older to remember those Clayton's adverts for the drink you have when you're not having a drink. What did you buy? You could buy spirits free of alcohol. So you could a gin and tonic, but you... Anyway, these concepts have no scientific credibility, but we seem stuck with them. Number 2, you've got a CCP on the slaughter floor, and you claim, you're very good, you say we have CCPs, surface of the carcass within 24 hours or within RI, depending on what you have in your plan, HACCP plan. You chill to conform with the RI and zero tolerance for monitoring and trimming. Let me ask you again, do you have CCPs? If you do, switch on mute and be coming. Anybody? Now we are here from the pork industry. Peter, if you meet Peter, do you have any other CCPs for pork other than these? Because you put your carcasses or your sides, rather, through a gas burner, don't you? So you actually burn the flesh. Peter? Okay.
Unfortunately, his is not working, so he can hear you, but he can't answer. So I'll have to put something in the chat. I will relay that to you.
All right. Can't even do sign language, Pete. Oh, so you play the game, these CCPs, but the big question is, does any ching or trimming for science prevent the S-tech? No. Does it eliminate it? No. Does it reduce it to an acceptable level? Well, we couldn't do that because there's no acceptable level. This game for market access, but cost. Later we'll give a little calculation. Picture number 3. ESA started in 1998. MLA fought it on aspects. First of all, we put forward with AMIC or NMA as it was then, I think. If you have it, live database. They had in New Zealand something called Lab. Could it be live? Where communicate with companies, maybe on a monthly or 3-monthly basis, in a proactive way. It's always looked at everybody's results, similar to ESAM, but different, but similar. Those results, and made a league ladder from with very low E. coli detections up the top to with very high detection on the bottom. And they concentrated on the top and the bottom because if you didn't get much E. coli, it was either because you were doing the test wrong or you had a good system, and they didn't know. If you were down the bottom because you didn't do the E. coli test properly, or you had a system and they want to know. But didn't get anywhere with that. AQUIS didn't want that, and it stayed as a passive database for a long time until somebody took over and did something with it 10 years after it had started. The thing we wanted to do was to see if we could get this out and satisfy the Americans by leaving out the hind leg site. This is very difficult. You've got to get steps and get a chiller with lots of carcasses. We got CIO Alliance and CSIRO to do a lot of work on stats, and it's yes, you can get the same result with those 2 lower sites, but we did anyway. But we try. And NA came in, and that's obvious. It was in a way because you always trimmed visible contamination, and you'd want to. But no, it had a meaning. I did to do more looking. And so it's a vicious circle, it drags you in. So we knew to play this game, obviously have CCPs, but we don't. I've done some back-up calculations which show that an average company pays $1 million for monitoring ESAM and MHA. Danger number 4 and 5, systems brought in, and whoever they are this week, WR, you get monthly visits by an ATM, so you pay for 2 days of a highly priced person, cross-its from interstate. Some companies wanted to go on to internationally recognized systems. Systems that come in was stayed with those 2 people, and Debbie Peters, who did huge amount in the industry, and they set Woolworths and will put in standards, including the micro standards, which I know you find very to meet. Not, and they also started the annual HACCP conference, which has been a wonderful thing. This isn't with us anymore, but we remember him, and he did an awful lot for the industry in terms of quality systems. Got theirs, and they've got guideline specs for meters as well. So here's systems that they've taken up, one will have ISO, and there's a WQA because you supply Woolworths. You have similar things for Coles, and you need certification bodies like SGS and FBSI and food safety auditors, and those auditors are well known to you.
Can I just interrupt here? I've got a question about how they choose the ESAM sites and why they choose those particular ones. Oh, sorry, I'm a bit behind.
See, the 3 sites, Americans said, we thought for many years, and I think the American industry thinks the same thing, that they are not the most functional of sites in terms of predicting what might happen. For example, if we find E. coli somewhere, what does it mean? Other companies do their own monitoring as well as ESAM, have their own sites, which for their particular process, they think are important. There's some people line because their system gives them click, and you can get something on the back, and they sample there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, my next question, keep in mind, my next heading saying, have you tailored your HACCP system for the auditor? I know it's come there, and you have to get everything ready. You have to hand, take a fortune. One auditor who very kindly made his schedule available. Sorry, you've got this merry-go-round now. Sorry about that. You, the companies, you know, or you're to have a level of certification. So linked with certification companies, and they give you that certificate. And then you're linked with auditors who come and tick the boxes for you. The learner, does it work? And you know, there's people involved. This is a little French phrase which I like very much. And it really means 3 people screwing each other at the same time. Pick that all around the country where you are. Well, what's got to do with the meat industry? One of you is getting screwed instead of the 3. So you're doing all right, but you're getting screwed. You're a guess, aren't you? Oh dear. Garibaldi, which responsible for that big problem, they are audited all the time on behalf of Qantas and the locality. In 2005, a company in South Australia made meat, corned beef with malaria, and regularly audited by a controlling authority and a supermarket. Does auditing give us comfort? No, it does. And auditor, it's a schedule. This slide and next from an auditor, and he gave me everything for 3 weeks. He was working for 15 of the 21 7-day weeks. Billed every week. So he was working a lot and was making a lot of money for his company, and include travel. He 4 states in 3 weeks. He audited to these different systems, and he audited all these options, very diverse. He was in planes, hire cars, drive 2,000 k. He did in every Saturday, was out again every Sunday. Now, who'd be auditor? Well, there's money in it, but thinking 20 odd years back, we thought auditing would be a great thing, but now it's probably ticking boxes. Was the day of 2012 when the world changed. Up until then, we had very nice systems called the booking methods. We could sponge a carcass or take a bit of excision sample and use these pregnancy kits to see if we had a potential there. And we're in a fool's paradise because it wasn't a very good system. The Americans have made us test more product. So then when you've got to test 25 grams, then you've got to test 25 grams, and now 75, N60. And the more that you test, the more likely you are to find something. So they made it more difficult. Now N60 is earthy of a system. And after earthy for 2 reasons. First of all, if you 75 grams from a kilo of meat, 18 tons of trim, does it represent it? Well, there's a 95% that it does represent it, that it will find an S-Tech if these 3 things happen. So the S there, 5% or greater, or greater, the S-Tech is randomly distributed 18 tons, and you take random samples. So that's the statistics. It does work, but only these 3 things happen. Well, that's right, because it's only there at about 0.7, 0.8%. It random? No, it isn't. Anything but. That because if a carcass goes through that be contaminated, CSIRO have done this, the next is all have S-Tech. So they're in a cluster. So come to, if a system, suppose it's 1%, which it is getting on for, and randomly distributed, well it isn't, 300 samples, you'd have 5% chance of finding it. But it is random, so all bets are off. N60 is dreamed up by someone and earthy. Where the hell did it come from? That IEH laboratories, who have a laboratory here and have their own systems, their own methods of detecting S-Techs, SIS, that they the most stringent testing plan devised by this outfit, emission for microbiological specifications for foods. Very good, a very good outfit. The last 40 years who've given us all the sampling methods. They're very good. They said, if you take N60, that'll be good for grinding. Look at that's wrong. The IS divide foods into acids into 15 cases. Case 1 is a food, a very benign organism in it, not going to cause much danger, and the food is probably cooked, so the organism will never be there. Right to here, case 15, we're looking at organisms that grow in the food, like listeria in cooked meats, that are very dangerous, very severe organisms like listeria, % death rate. Aztecs probably come here, except on that one, as we'll see in a minute. If the severity of the hazards, we've got which don't do anything. Staph, which is mild, Sala, Campi are moderate, but these two, Aztecs, listeria, are severe. Now, we link up with our N60. You can see, here's the hazard. You go down the bottom to severe hazards. Well, Aztec is severe. But if you go across this way with the cases, it would be here. The pathogen is inactivated. It's inactivated by freezing a little bit. It's activated hugely by cooking. So we should be there. But for some reason, we are here. We are N60, and we should be N15 at worst, and even N5.
Jenny, you're using a pointer, I think, that we can't see.
Oh. Okay, stop using it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're following it. So can I just ask with the N60,
Yep.
The Americans decreed that N60 should be used. Why did the rest of the world jump on the bandwagon and just adopt it? Why wasn't it ever questioned or challenged?
Well, I don't know. It wasn't challenged. It's challenged. I mean, at conferences and in publications in the literature, it is challenged. The case NC was a case only for baby foods, where you've got milk powders, might make a bottle of milk and then it out so that there's a time, there's a temperature and a time where organisms can grow. That's been challenged a lot. What other countries do it is because they can. They wouldn't want to be any less stringent than the Americans. Easy option to say, well, if they did, well, we'll have it. But scientific basis for it. It has been challenged, but who's saying? 60 might only be a station on the way. The Americans are, or been rumouring, more N60. Well, this is a poster paper which Maya wrote with Jensen and myself and presented in America at their big conference. In it, we had, well, if we do more testing, will it make any difference? And yes, KMI very good. He said if you do any sampling at all, just send it. There should be 43 illnesses from our meat in the meats every year. See, if you do that and put some lots of production, then you get less illnesses. But up to N90 or N120, they get one less. And so modelled that all illnesses will be in the home, with undercooking in the home. You know, so no sampling is always as good as ND. Published it, but deaf ears. Same thing, Andre, for Japan. Japan said, we want a risk assessment of the meat of sensors. Vincent acted very quickly and nimbly. I got a better system. Why come out here and lower system for a week and work on a risk assessment, sit down with you and do a risk assessment. And Andrea stepped them through it for 2 days. Here's the punchline right at the end. McDonald's people who are sitting on the edge of their seat, you expect S-Tech illnesses from our meat, and expect that per century. They were happy with that, and so to be. So this next game changer, the 7 S-Techs, now into serious micro, DNA testing, a lot of chances for false positives. A potential positive means disruption to your teaching schedule and a lot into the testing labs. So another change, not for the better. And because of this man, Bill Muller, the lawyer who people who have been made ill by food, he petitioned the FSIS. And his petition, you should declare that all eggs are adulterants and ban on the meat supply. And FSIS said, okay, we'll do it. And that's fact for us. We didn't find much in the way of S-Tech. With the booking, after the 4th, 2012, it rocketed, and it's been costing a fortune ever since. Game changer 8, Supermarkets go feral. Here's the front page of Coles requirements. The 191 pages. And you have trained staff via Coles Academy system. Now, they're trainers, another outfit does that for them. But all those years, we didn't do this. In the last 2 or 3, we do. 91 pages for Coles. Woolworths, a friend sent me a typical audit of a company. What they look for. SGS, I'm not sure whether SGS are auditors anymore. I think it's BSI. But SGS developed this system for Woolworths, and one of them, the UA checklist, has 40-90 lines in Excel. There's something here. Just a little bit out of it. It's lines 1008 to 1030. But I'll give you an idea of what the auditor is ticking off in the boxes. And it's just one aspect of it. You know, if I go back to the previous, you can see all of those aspects are covered. And I'm only at one here. And non-conformances, of course, are cars and two. Never used to need it for red meat, but apparently we do now. You have to play the game. Interventions, lastly, and I'll run this pretty quickly because you know these things. Vacuuming. Does it work? No, it doesn't. Here's some my work that was done in Canada, 25 lamb hindquarters, before and after, total the same, E. coli count is the same. And that is for anything to get killed, you have the surface of the meat to survive for 5 seconds. And of course you can't, because that steam vac is moving all the time. For visible, good for visible. For micro, no. Lactic acids are very good. Ionic acids are very good. And we've got Jay Kocherunchit from NAS, whom many will have heard talking about the work they're doing by putting organic acid up in the spring chill water and what effect that has. But that organic acids are good. They will give you a good kill. Trim looks a bit, but coli. To do trimming, you go very deep and take a lot of meat. And companies do that, and it does work for them. But trimming, visible, and it works, it doesn't. Hot water works. You get a 1 to 2 log reduction. 2 means 99% of E. coli have been taken. And you can see the macro here. 20 samples, 12 is a good number if you want to test before and after A versus treatment B. You can see water probably better than steam, and that's because the water heats down the carcass and actually washes off bacteria, what steam doesn't as effectively. Works. If you put organic acid behind the hot water, that works as well. So you can get good kills. Here in America, Company A, and then their local university, which is a very good university in micro, to come and tell them how they're doing with each of our interventions. And see, they have all those interventions, 7 of them. And each intervention, the university came in and painted on a number of S-Tech, not panic S-Tech, but they did them on, and then the treatment, and many were left. So they calculate how many were killed or removed. And it's great. I mean, you add all those up, reductions up, and it's a huge number. Funny that not after that, you had to recall 8,000 tons of ground beef, containers for S-Tech. These things where you can have the inactivation validated in theory by university studies, but it today because sometimes the S-Tech is too great. The population there is too great. And so these things called super shedders, about which we know almost nothing, except super shedder shits. It's a shitter. Put on about 1 million S-Tech gram of feces. Here's a thing done. North American company. They had made lots of interventions, even more than the other one that we saw before. I said to the laboratory, you did a lot of work here about 10 years ago, and that's in our baseline. But we've done heaps. come in and repeat the work, and that's where we are. And how good is that company? Now, they ran one generic E. coli in 10,000 square centimeters. About the area of a carcass, of a side, say the outside. If you draw the little 100 centimeter bits on there, it would come to about 10,000. Incredible. Generic. And they sponged all of higher 50 animals, and they found one E. coli, and they found none of them had E. coli. There's a company that's in huge improvements. Had those improvements not validated, but enumerated, and they published it. You can see the publication. Great result, great cost with all the interventions, but a tail. That also to do a major recall of this. You can see in 2 languages. So one of them is French. So it's a Canadian company. And the recall product. The take is you make your ins work, but they don't always. Finally, well, not quite finally, but another thing on hazards and risks. There's a fair work being done on our Australian STECs. Look at it. Well, run a system, and you do risks. Principle 1, so you should be doing something about risks. And the industry did a risk assessment in 2005, and was low risk for all products eaten here, but significant risk in meat exported to the States because they undercook. And really, Andreas Meyer has done some number crunching about illnesses. Now, I talked about it a bit earlier, but here we published it in America, so the Americans will see it. And all the trim we export goes into Aussie burgers. It isn't mixed, isn't mingled because as Aussie burgers. Well, we supply 2.5 billion hamburgers and around 40 illnesses. All the illnesses would be in the home, and one would be quick serve restaurants. Now, that's a huge statement about our product, but at the moment, it's a publication. We haven't done anything with it. With illness rates, I wondered why. And again, history via MLA and AMPC, and SLIP, teamed up with CSIRO and American lab to compare texts that the Americans get and the texts that we get. And the lovely bit of work, very elegant bit of work, is left-hand side in purple and orange is a family tree. Now, and the blue bits are X in American cattle and American people who are ill. The other bits are the S-Tex in Australian cattle and Australian people who are ill. Very different. Our S-Tex now have evolved by isolation, different from the American ones. Ours cause less severe illness. Those of you who look for S-Tex every day, you know that 2 genes for the bigger toxins, STIX1 and STIX2. Well, STIX2 is 300 to 400 times more virulent, more likely to cause disease than ours. Big effect. we get hardly any STEC illnesses in Australia. We get, well, again, industry, MLA, commissioned people at the health system to look at it. They made all STEC illnesses in Australia over 10 years. 92 people were ill, so 80 a year. No food. They found an outbreak from potato salad, one from an unknown food vehicle, but nothing to do with meat. They found that illnesses from insects were uncommon or were there. And if you who do this testing every day will know those 4 of the big 6. Testing for 4 organisms which are either not here or are never here. Figure. We're lucky. Lower rates of STEC than lots of countries like us. And you express it as illnesses per 100,000 people. We're in red, and that STEC, we have 0.4, it comes out to 4 illnesses per million people per annum. We're about 10 times less than other countries. Big deal. That should say something about risk. We don't know anything about that knowledge. I wish we did. We talked to our customers and said, look, so and the health departments have looked at our STECs. The amount of 96,000 illnesses, a 250,000 STEC illnesses a year, with 82 on average. Be a difference. The last bit, better way. We must have a better way than those 9 game changers which are killing us, especially we know the risk from our products are much lower. The ways. And first of all, we've got to admit the obvious. Statement there, the US is the only country which ground beef dangerous by design. Excellent Americans, and I've seen a figure like 30% to eat hamburgers rare. And a proportion of that X% people pay the price. But we have to care for that percent. How do Americans do it? How do the American food industry do it? Well, there's stuff around. If you're American and you ask for a rare hamburger, one of 2 things. Be both these things. There's a food safety risk, and they sell you a rare burger. Now it's your risk. As I had once, people next door to me and go, the hamburger, and the question was, they came out with a form, please waiver. Say waiver. It's a document, your responsibility for a product which is dangerous, an undercooked hamburger, completely on the front foot about and not. Number 2, we talked about our STECs have over 1 million illnesses every year from STEC, the Americans. We have about 80. Now, they've got 10 times the population, but there's a big difference even on a population basis. It's huge. Now, why? Our STECs are much less likely to actually cause disease than in cattle. Now, the industry, did you know this? I bet you didn't. I bet you know our STECs are much less virulent. Why don't we get on the front foot about it? See, get monitoring. asked about ESAM before. We do it because we are told to do it. If you want to sell to us, do it. MHA, and he tell us nothing. Density is a hopeless predictor of S-Tech. We know that. It's all the time. And I don't answer, but I'm asking, get anything out of the PHI? Or this bookwork for somebody, get a traffic light somewhere down the road. That's great. And like the supermarkets, why is one like this? You just got out of hand? I think you do. Do your food safety management system, your HACCP system, to the auditor. So when you come, you can sit down in the boardroom or the training room, give stuff, hold your hand, they can tick the boxes, give you the invoice. Intensity of audit equal to the risk. About done now. Big finish, big ride. I want you all to say after me, I had a sell, I'm not taking it anymore. There wasn't there, I forget what it was called, Newsroom or something. An Australian actor, Peter Finch, was a reader. In the end, he realised he was reading crap, out on his balcony and screamed down Manhattan, I'm as hell, and I'm not taking it anymore. So I'm sorry we haven't talked. I'll see you. I can put your hands up and ask questions. But I would like you to write down the one thing you'd like to see changed in our industry and set to Mintrack.
I mean, he's not going to promise to be able to make any changes, but we'll pass it on.
Be the repository. Or as Mr. Hutt would say, the suppository.
I knew it was coming.
You knew that was coming? Yes, I know about it. So, I'm sorry we haven't spoken. There's a time to speak now, is there, Jen?
There's plenty of time. So if people want to unmute themselves, they can certainly start asking some questions. Start, John, by asking, in your second last slide, you asked about whether or not people are structuring their systems to suit the audits. Can we ask the people who are listening to comment on that, whether they are, whether their systems are really structured around auditing requirements or whether they are structured around process control from perspectives?
Leading question, Jen. They'd be good to admit it.
That'd be a rhetorical question, John.
Yes. Well, the other thing is that you're all QA people, and not much time at the best of times. But any of you have been here for an hour, and for that, I'm 16 now, so maybe some of you want to drift off because you've got a heap of work to do. So I'll thank you. It's been lovely talking to you. I only wish I could see you and get comments because I learned something that way. So very much, everyone.
John, and we'll send out an evaluation form after this to get people's feedback because we obviously look to improve the structure and format of the webinars as we go along. We'd be interested to see what people feel. So thank you very much, John.
But there should be a survey pop up at the webinar, but if you don't get that, we can definitely send out a written survey as well, or you can email me with any questions for John or any comments. Thanks.
Thanks. Good presentation.
Oh, long.
Very long.
Jenny, how are you going?
Great. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone. Bye.